I thought last week was, got a lot done and kind of what we wanted to get done. And yeah, it's good today to get going and back into game week. And it was good to be with the guys today and obviously looking forward to playing this game against a very good Notre Dame team. And so we got to have a good week of preparation and looking forward to that.
Well, what, if anything, looks different about Jack during his 3 games at Notre Dame compared to when he was here? How strange do you think it'll be with him on the other sideline, given the relationship you developed with him?
Yeah, I think that, as you watch and you see it, I mean, obviously there's enough different team, and yet, he's always going to work and continue to work to improve. And I think it's, certainly there's a story line, and yet I think it's important that it's Wisconsin versus Notre Dame, and yet I think that obviously we have a respect for Jack, and appreciate who he is as a person and a player here, and teammate, but it's Wisconsin versus Notre Dame.
Well, from week 1 to week 2, I know the game plan changes, different opponent, but it looked like Graham spread the ball out to his receivers more than he did in the first week. Was that just by coincidence, or did you go into week 2 saying we need to get more guys involved?
Yeah, I think that you're always, kind of within any plan. You don't quite know how a team's going to defend you. You always want to have certainly enough ways that you can spread the ball around, and then kind of the game will dictate a little bit where it goes or to who it goes to. So I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, you try every game to make sure that you've got, you want to be able to attack the field, different spots on the field and with different people, right? And so some games play out that way more than others.
Well, on offense and as a play caller, how can you account for a guy like Kyle Hamilton, who's a safety? It's not like he's in the front 7 where you can, assign a blocker to him. How do you try to game plan around a guy that's that talented?
Yeah, I mean, he is talented, right? And in my history is that you focus too much on one guy and you start, you want to rob Peter to pay Paul. And so I think that you got to have it fit into, you got to kind of build rules that it fits in, and that's the, you play a good team, they're going to have really good players, and I think that's what we're facing this week, a number of really good players and a well-coached team at that, and so I think you've got to certainly, the good players, where they're at, but you got to be careful not to overcompensate, and then you can hurt yourself in other ways.
Seemed the second game you divided carries a little bit more equally than you did the first game. I don't know if that was by design or by the level of the opponent, but I'm just wondering how important is running back depth nowadays versus just having one guy to carry the load, and how has that kind of evolved over the years, your philosophy on that?
Well, I think it depends, and certainly, anytime that you can, I don't care what position it is, if you've got more than one guy that can contribute, that's a good thing for a team. And yet, not too long ago where we didn't have as much, we're going to ride Jonathan Taylor, right? And still other backs got carries. But so I think, and that was a good thing to have too. And yet, we like the group. Obviously, I think, they're gaining experience as we continue on. But I think this year for this team, we're going to need all of them, and we need them to continue to develop.
Well, your front 7 through 2 games has been able to control things pretty well. What would you say have been some of the keys to success with that group at this point?
Well, I think it's, I think we've got some really good players, and I think, we've done a nice job of kind of scheming appropriately, and yet where guys know what they're doing and they can kind of loose and play. And that's what's kind of fun about the game, is each week it's going to be a different challenge. And certainly will be a challenge this week.
Well, I know we're just 2 games in, but kind of getting back to spreading the ball around through receivers. Do you think you have the running backs who can contribute in that area, if need be, against a particular opponent as receivers?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think that, certainly as the season progresses, you don't quite know which game, but you're going to need production from them. And I mean, you think about it, you're going to need it from all positions, and certainly in some games there's a lean one way or the other. But I think your hope is when you look back at a season that you've gotten production from each of the different units.
Well, you've got 2 quarterbacks now who started a lot of games for you and their careers elsewhere with Alex and Jack. I know it's kind of the way of the world in college sports these days. Does it bother you? Does it leave a bad taste in your mouth? Are you able to move on pretty quickly? What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I think that, each one is, they're different circumstances. And I think that you always, it's kind of like when they come as well, that you want to respect decisions and go with it, and then you do move on. I think you have to move on. And so I think that's kind of what's happened here. I think to me, the 2 that you referred were kind of, there was enough differences. It wasn't the exact same situation. I think each does take on kind of a little different dynamic.
Sure. All you guys have lost some guys at times to targeting calls, and each week it seems like there's some calls across the country that people disagree with. There was one in the Penn State game that was kind of controversial, but I'm just curious, do you think that the targeting rule is doing what it's intended to do? And would you also like to see maybe, instead of an ejection, maybe a staggered set of penalties so it's not as severe for like a first timer?
Yeah, I mean, I think big picture, it probably, certainly there's a tension, and you have to, I think as players, as coaches, you certainly coach to it different than when there wasn't the rule. You said it, when you have multiple offenders or someone that does it multiple times, that's a little tricky. Are they getting it? What I mean? And yet they are so, I just think back now of all the ones that we've kind of been associated with, and there are some that I think it was definitely not the intent. I got to think back at T.J. Edwards had one, and that's the ones where you, like, I don't know how to tell you, you want to keep the head out of it, right? And yet there's some of those where we kind of all know it when there's someone launching themselves at it, and when they're not. That's hard, I think, to put into a rule, but I think we kind of all know it. And so I appreciate what the original intent was, and then like a lot of them, there's going to be some of those that I don't think that's why the rule was put into place, but it can be hard for I think that's one thing that's tricky for the officials is you put all these rules and we kind of know what it's for, but then there's a decision that has to be made, and especially on those who they're taking, does it meet all the kind of qualifications for it? So I don't know that I have the right answer.
Quick follow, do you think an ejection, an automatic ejection for a first time, is too harsh a penalty for a kid? Especially if you look at it and say, look, he wasn't trying to do it.
Right, and it's hard, I agree, and it's, we're now trying to judge intent, right? And that's, I see both sides of it.
Well, Graham's talked about in the past, one of his goals this year was to be more poised in the pocket and maintain his fundamentals when there's pressure. How have you seen him try to work on that, and where do you think he's at in that through 2 games?
I think he's working through it. I think that he's had some that he has done that, and I think there was some early where he wasn't as poised in the pocket. And so I think he does a good job in practice when those situations occur, trying to address it. That's when you have to do it, right? You just have to kind of be how you play. And I think that, it's a work in progress, but I think he is progressing.
Welcome back. Well, of course, I'm sure you guys are definitely focusing on the game on Saturday, but just talking about what this weekend means to the state of Wisconsin from a number of sporting events, your game, the Ryder Cup, Sunday Night Football for the Packers, and the Brewers in the playoff hunt. Just in general, what does this weekend mean to Wisconsin sports in your eyes?
Well, when you say it like that, there's a lot going on, you know, and it's, we've been pretty fortunate, you know, obviously with the Bucks and all that, and it's been fun kind of following the Brewers and obviously, you know, the Ryder Cup, and that's not something that just happens, right? You know, so there's a lot going on, and we're just gonna try to do all we can and put in the work and effort so that we can uphold our end of it.
Well, you mentioned earlier it's Wisconsin versus Notre Dame, but fairly or unfairly, it's going to become, you know, national story-wise anyway, Mertz versus Cohn. Just how have you seen Graham handle that, the noise of this coming week?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we all understand that's, you know, the storyline that's out there, but I think it's important for really Graham and our whole team to know that that's what's awesome about football, is it's a team sport, and it's going to take our team going up against a very good Notre Dame team, and that's where the game is going to be played.
Steve?
How do you like having these neutral site matchups, having the game in Soldier Field and Lambeau Field down the road? Would you prefer it as a home and home, or do you kind of think this is something special having it where you're having it?
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's always, you know, from our end of it, it's, you know, what is the schedule, and I'm excited for our kids to, you know, be involved in games that are meaningful. And, you know, I believe personally that every game has big meaning to it, and every game's a great opportunity. But I also know that there's more around this game, and, you know, for our fans and you know, nationally, and I think that's why kids come here, you know, and be part of that. And so, you know, you're just grateful for the opportunity to be playing in big games, and you know, it's our job then to take advantage of that opportunity. And the best way we can do that is put all the work in and have a great week of preparation so we can go out and play our best.
Well, you're playing a guy who was here for several years and knows your system, but you know his strengths and weaknesses. Does either side have an advantage in such a scenario? Is it a wash? Is it a factor?
Yeah, again, I think that all that's true, you know, what you're saying, and yet I think that it still comes down to kind of takes everyone, you know, and so it's not just a 2-person show, you know, it's 2 teams going to play, and so I think that's probably what overrides it more than anything. All right, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Paul, one more. Just with Leo Chanel, I know saw him back on the depth chart, didn't see him on the preliminary status report. Do you foresee him being full go for this week, both in practices and into the game?
We do.